Hi, I'm Kevin. Welcome to Concept One Shop Talk, and we're going to talk about alternators today. Today we're going to talk about alternators. Over the last few years we've seen more accessories, more electrical components installed on these builds, and so we're going to try to talk about that today, show you some different type of alternators and also about the amperage draws. This is a CS 130 GM style alternator. Obviously we use PowerMaster, and these alternators, like the standard alternator for years for us has been a 105 amp alternator. So that sounds like a pretty good alternator, and it is. But what we don't realize is that an idle 105 amp alternator only puts out 70 to 80 amps. So what we're seeing is when people are running dual fans, amplifiers, stereos, electric fuel pumps, electric water pumps, whatever they may be running, that is just an increased load on an alternator. So what we've been working on this probably close to a year, and the first thing we started doing was, we're seeing the alternators overheat. So then we started offering, instead of 105, we have an upgrade to a 140 amp alternator. Now, 140 amp alternator is fine for, say, a 67 Camaro with standard electronics and a single electric fan. 105 is plenty. But if you run dual fans or any of this other stuff, then we've started upgrading to a 140 amp. Now, that created another problem. So the harder we work these things, the hotter they tend to get. So people were burning up alternators and stuff like that. So the next thing we did was we started working on some new fans. So we made some new billet fans that, in my mind, look a lot better than a stock OEM style fan, but these will actually cool better. They draw more air, flow more air than a standard OEM fan. So we've worked on that and made it a lot better. But now we're seeing more and more. So a 140 amp alternator will put out around 95 to 100 amps at an idle. So we start calculating. For example, we've got a radiator here with electric fans on it. And so I was talking to my friend Jim at Auto Rad Radiators, who builds these things. And we were checking, and these fans will pull, it says 18 amps each. But we have to have a 35 amp breaker. So what that tells us is, when this thing's just running constant, it's pulling about 18 amps. But when that thing kicks on, it's just taking probably 30 amps. So we have two of them. So right there, we've got 60 amps. So just think about that. You're sitting in traffic on a hot day, you've got your air conditioner on, your blower wide open, your stereo running, and then your two fans kick on. We have a major overload. So what that does is overheat the alternator. As we were looking at this CS 130, and we're talking about the heavier loads, now we have started on our LS systems going to some higher amp alternators. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. On the small block and big block, we've still been pretty good. We haven't really seen an issue. So the 140, this alternator can be pushed to like 160. At an idle though, it's only going to get us a little over 100 amps. So now we'll take a look at what we're doing on the LS engines. This is a GM style CS 130D. Now on this one, it starts out about 120 amps at the top end, and then it's around 100 amps, 95 to 100 amps at an idle. Now that's going to be our standard, because like I say, some people are still going pretty simple, and that works. Now we can also go to a 165 in this alternator, and then at the 165 top end, it'll charge about 100 amps at an idle. Then we're going to offer an AD 244 style alternator. Now this one is a hot rod, and it can go, we're going to offer two styles on it. It'll have 180 at the top end. It'll be a 135 at the bottom end. So it's a pretty stout alternator. And then the real big alternator, the highest one we're going to offer at this point, is a 220 amp alternator at top speed or top, and then but it's going to be able to put out 150 at an idle. So that one is really strong. Now on our website we're going to offer or have a page that you can go to check this out. We have a chart right here that'll kind of tell you in a nutshell, to really get the exact number, you'd have to test every brand. But this will give you an idea about how much your components are going to draw as far as amperage. Just a couple of them, like halogen bulbs, that adds 10 amps each. Electric fans, 30 to 50 amps. That's going to be on a startup. Like we said here, these are probably pulling about 30 amps each at startup. So electric fuel pumps, which on an LS engine, a lot of people, you have to run an electric fuel pump, so that's an extra draw. Computer doesn't draw a lot, but it does draw. The management system. Air ride suspensions are a big draw, especially if they automatically level themselves out, because they're constantly trying to correct and level the car. Okay. If you get anything out of this little video, is I really want to stress that we have to pay attention to our amp loads at an idle. That's where you're going to, if you think about it in a hot rod, that's probably where you spend most of your time, is idling around at a car show or in traffic or this, that, and the other. And the truth is, if we get that part right, the rest of it's going to take care of itself. So pay attention to the idle loads. I also want to, on this chart that we've got on the website that you'll be able to look at, the charge wires are very important. The size of the wire, the gauge of the wire, and the length of it. That makes a big difference. So the chart there tells you how many amps and a certain, how long the distance is between the alternator and the battery or the starter or wherever you're running that wire. Shorter is better. So PowerMaster recommends running it to the shortest distance. Okay. Now, one other thing I want to discuss is a lot of people are buying anodized kits. We have a clear and a black right here. One thing I want to emphasize is that when you have an anodized kit, a lot of times the alternators don't get a very good ground through the anodizing. So we want to tell you that you need to run a ground wire from the alternator down to the engine to make sure that it has a good ground, and that ground wire needs to be the same diameter as the charge wire. Okay, as we were talking about the fans, as a side note, I think it would be a good idea to stagger the way these fans kick on. I personally would put one, say at 195 degrees, and the second one comes on well, when you turn your AC on, but also at say 215 or something like that. That way, instead of having 60 amps hit at one time, you're having 30 and 30, and it will be a lot easier on your alternator. Thanks for watching Concept One Shop Talk. We'll see you next time.